Okay, so now that we have the user interface cleaned up, let's look at some of the functionality. We could go ahead and start sculpting on this sphere here, and basically we'd just kind of be tinkering around. Um, but you'll notice if I go ahead and I try to click on this and drag, we'll get this little menu that says, to enable sculpting, please convert this primitive to a polymesh 3D. So polymesh 3D basically converts this primitive object to a sculptable mesh. Before we do that, I want to explain to you what's going on right now. Because this is a primitive, we have some features that we can use for this primitive. This is kind of an old school way of doing it. There's some new features that I'll show you in just a second that does this. So if you go down in your tool palette on the right hand side all the way to the bottom where it says initialize, if we click that, we have some features here, like we have a couple of X, Y, Z alignment. We have X size, so we can squash and stretch this sphere. We have coverage, so you can see that we have this coverage here, so we can like kind of Pac-Man this out. We have divide, so this is the divisions. You can see we can turn the divisions up and down because this is a primitive object. We have some control over how it initially starts looking. Okay, so to get this out of this feature, we will go up to the very top of our tool palette again on the right hand side, then go down to Make Polymesh 3D, and as soon as I click that, you'll notice that my initialize menu has changed. Okay, so this no longer lets me control how the sphere looks. This gives me some other features we'll talk about later. And again, to get to some of these features here, I just left click in a negative area in that palette and I can slide up and down. So now that I've made this a polymesh 3D, we can come over to our object and just click and start to push and pull the surface and sculpt on it. And that's Make Polymesh 3D. So the Make Polymesh 3D, one last thing to be aware of, you don't have to necessarily start out like that. You can if you want to. There are a couple of other features that allow you to do this. Typically when I start, I'll bring in a base shape like this sphere, immediately turn it into a polymesh 3D, and start manipulating it in a slightly different way. But I wanted to show you this because you're more than likely going to get that error, because a lot of students forget, you bring in the object and they want to start sculpting on it and you get that error message. Just remember, you have to click this Make Polymesh 3D, and that makes your object sculptable.